The real horror of poverty isn't the empty fridge or the overdue bills. It's the quiet moment when you stop believing in your own future. When the grind wears you down so completely that you hand over the one thing no one can take from you, yourself, and you do it forever. Picture this: you wake up every single day already behind. The rent is late again. The lights might flicker off by next week. And the job that barely covers gas leaves you too exhausted to chase anything better. At first, you fight it. You tell yourself this is temporary. You make lists of side hustles. You stay up late updating resumes. You whisper your old dreams to yourself in the dark. But weeks turn into months. And months stretch into years. Each small failure stacks up like bricks around your chest. You apply for that better position and hear nothing. You try to save $20 this month and watch it vanish on an unexpected repair. Slowly, the voice in your head that once said keep going starts to sound ridiculous. Why bother? The system doesn't care. The odds never shift. And one ordinary Tuesday, without any ceremony, you stop trying. That's the horror. Not the poverty itself, but the surrender. Poverty doesn't just take your money. It rewires how your mind works. Scientists call it scarcity mindset. But for the people living it, it's simpler. Your brain is so busy scanning for the next crisis that it has no room left for big ideas. You stop planning 6 months ahead because tomorrow already feels impossible. You stop dreaming because dreams cost hope. And hope feels like a luxury you can't afford. Every decision shrinks. Do I buy the slightly better groceries that might last longer? Or the cheap ones that get me through today? Do I risk asking for a raise and maybe lose the job I hate but need? Or stay silent and stay stuck? These tiny calculations eat up the mental space where ambition used to live. And the worst part, it starts to feel normal. You look around and see people just like you making the same compromises. The friend who had plans to go back to school now works double shifts and jokes that life happens. The neighbor who used to talk about starting a small business now says the world isn't built for people like us. You nod along because it feels true. Your own story begins to sound like theirs. You were never lazy or stupid, you worked hard, but the results never matched the effort. So you conclude the problem must be you. Not the circumstances. Not the invisible walls. Just you. And once that thought settles in, giving up doesn't feel like defeat anymore. It feels like facing reality. I want you to really sit with that for a second. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you no longer expect anything good to happen to you. Not in a dramatic, movie tragic way. Just a flat, everyday acceptance. Your goals quietly slide from I want to build something to I just need to make it to Friday. You stop reading books that might inspire you because they make the gap between your life and those pages hurt too much. You stop talking about the future with your kids or your partner because you don't want to lie to them. And you don't want to admit out loud how small eyesight has become. You become the person who says I'm fine when anyone asks. Because explaining the slow death of your own belief in yourself sounds too pathetic even in your head. This is what poverty does when it wins. It doesn't just keep you broke. It convinces you that broke is who you are. That you were never meant for more. That the version of you who once had fire in their eyes was naive and now you've grown up. The horror is permanent because once you internalize that story, you stop looking for exits. You stop noticing opportunities. You stop investing in yourself time, energy, even basic care, because why pour anything into a future that already feels cancelled? Think about the people you've known who seem to vanish inside themselves, not because they stopped existing, but because they stopped reaching. They smile at family gatherings. They show up for work. They pay what they can. But the light is gone. The plans are gone. They've traded their sense of possibility for the small safety of lowered expectations. And society barely notices because this kind of surrender doesn't make headlines. It doesn't look like crisis from the outside. It just looks like someone who's finally realistic. But here's what makes it so devastating. Every single person who gives up on themselves forever is carrying an entire unlived life. Ideas that will never be tested. Skills that will never be sharpened. Contributions that will never reach the world. Families that will inherit the same quiet defeat. It's not just personal tragedy, it's a slow leak of human potential happening in kitchens and bus stops and late-night shifts across every city and town. And the scariest thing is how invisible it becomes once it's complete. The person doesn't disappear. They just stop mattering to their own story. Poverty teaches you early that effort doesn't always equal outcome. You watch parents or neighbors grind for decades and still end up exactly where they started. That lesson sinks in deep. It trains you to protect yourself by not hoping too hard. Because hope, when it gets crushed over and over, starts to feel like self-inflicted pain. So you learn to kill it first. You lower the bar until it sits on the ground. You tell yourself you're being smart, practical, mature, but really, you're just exhausted from believing in a version of life that keeps proving it doesn't believe in you. The cycle tightens because this internal collapse makes everything harder. When your mind is heavy with defeat, showing up fully for anything feels impossible. You miss chances you might have once grabbed. You withdraw from people who could help. You stop taking care of your health or your appearance or your relationships because none of it seems to matter anymore. And the world looks at you and says, "See, they're not even trying." But they never saw the moment you tried until your soul was raw. And nothing changed. This is the real horror. Not the lack of cash in your pocket, but the lack of belief in your own worth. The day you decide, quietly and forever, that you are the problem instead of the circumstances around you. That your dreams were silly. That your place is here, small and safe and stuck. Yet even in the middle of describing it, I know the flip side exists. Some people refuse to let poverty rewrite their identity. They hold on to that last stubborn piece of themselves no matter how loud the evidence gets. They keep applying, keep learning, keep believing even when it hurts. Those are the stories we celebrate. But we rarely talk about the ones who didn't make it out, who surrendered not because they were weak, but because the weight was simply too much for one person to carry alone year after year. If you're watching this right now and any of this sounds familiar, know that recognizing the horror is the first crack in it. Naming what poverty has tried to do to your sense of self is how you start to take it back. Not overnight, not with some magic mindset shift, but by refusing to let the surrender become permanent. By deciding, even on the days when it feels pointless, that your story isn't finished just because today is hard. The real horror of poverty is giving up on yourself forever. Don't let it win. Your future self is still in there, waiting for you to remember that they matter. Thank you for staying with this all the way to the end. If this hit home or made you think, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There's more where this came from, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. See you in the next one.